While there is still some debate over when the eruption occurred in 79 AD, we have more certainty around how it unfolded, thanks to Pliny's letters. At around midday, Mount Vesuvius exploded. All of a sudden, a great cloud of volcanic ash and rock spurted out from the top of the mountain high into the air. Pliny, his mother, and his uncle, Pliny the Elder, watched on from Misenum.
My mother pointed out the appearance of a cloud of unusual size and appearance, rising up from some mountain, which was later established to have been Vesuvius. The pine tree, rather than any other, best describes its appearance and shape, for it rose up high into the sky on what one can describe as a very long trunk, and then it spread out into what looked like branches.
This cloud of dust and ash rose high into the sky, tens of kilometers into the atmosphere, and the cloud was quick to spread, carried by the wind. A huge area to the south of the volcano was covered in a veil of darkness. Being some 20 kilometers away from Vesuvius to the west, this frightening cloud didn't affect Pliny or Misenum. But at Pompeii, it was a different story. This prosperous port town was right in the firing line. For the people of Pompeii, all of a sudden the sky turned dark. It must have seemed as if day had turned to night, but with an added terror. Lumps of material started raining down on them, shards of volcanic pumice stones called lapilli alongside ash, both black and white in its colour, fallout from the great column that then rose above Vesuvius. Within hours, more than a metre of this material covered Pompeii's streets, with buildings already collapsing under the weight of this volcanic debris. For the likes of Pliny watching this great cloud from afar, they would have had little idea what was happening. But one man was determined to have a closer look. Pliny the Elder.
He had headed towards Stabiae, towards the area around Pompeii down there, from Misenum at the other end of the bay, at the initial signs of this unfolding disaster. And Pliny records his uncle's journey across the bay, right in front of where we are now. By now, ashes were falling on the ships, whiter and thicker the nearer they approached.
Then pumice stones also descended, and stones which were black, charred and split by the fires. Suddenly, they were in shallow water, and the shoreline bars their way with debris from the mountain. My uncle hesitated momentarily, wondering whether to turn back.
But then, as the steersman advised that course, he said to him,
"Fortune favours the brave."
Pliny wanted to rescue as many people as possible, including personal friends living near Vesuvius. But he was unable to make a landfall near Pompeii. The sheer amount of volcanic material falling from the sky had already started to form solid island masses on the water, blocking his squadron's path to the harbours. And so Pliny had his ships change course. They headed for Stabiae further south, where he met up with one of his frightened friends, a man called Pomponianus. Keeping a relaxed mood, Pliny calmed the panicking man.
He gave orders to be conveyed to the bath. After bathing, he reclined and dined in cheerful mood, or apparently cheerful, which was just as impressive.
Together they dined in the shadow of the erupting Vesuvius. And as volcanic debris continued to fall outside, Pliny even managed to steal a few hours' sleep. But he didn't sleep for long. In the middle of the night, Pliny was awakened as more massive earthquakes gripped the whole region. People panicked as their whole world started to shake from side to side. Even Pliny the Younger, back in Misenum, did not escape the terror.
Everything around us seemed to be not merely shifting, but turning upside down. We retired to the courtyard of the house. The buildings all round were shaking. Our fear of fallen buildings became great and definite.
It's excerpts like these that highlight another very deadly threat that Pliny and his fellow sufferers faced, that of great structures collapsing above their heads and burying unfortunate victims beneath. More than 20 kilometers away at Pompeii, things were even worse.
Some people had fled Pompeii in the run-up to the eruption, concerned by the increased seismic activity. But for those that had opted to remain, well, their options were limited. Either they sought cover in one of these houses, one of the buildings, or they fled into the countryside. Pliny gives us a sense of the ensuing chaos in nearby Stabiae with his uncle and his friends. They debated whether to stay indoors
Or to roam in the open, for the buildings were shaking with frequent, large-scale tremors, as though dislodged from their foundations. They seemed to shift now one way, and now another, and then back again. On the other hand, in the open they feared falling pumice stones, however light and hollow.
You can imagine similar chaotic scenes emerging, erupting in Pompeii at that time. Should they flee into the countryside, even at this late hour, even after the eruption itself, or should they try and wait out this storm? Neither option seemed particularly pleasant.
Walking through the remains of this town today, it's hard to envisage Pompeii during these final hours. The ground shaking violently, the roads covered in a thick layer of ash and pumice rock, roofs of two-story buildings collapsing left and right under the great weight of this terrifying material constantly falling from the sky. By the beginning of the following day, some 3 meters of pumice rock covered Pompeii's streets, with much of the town already in ruins. But little did Pompeii's remaining residents know that they were still in the first phase of the eruption. Back at Stabiae, things were similarly bleak. Unable to stay in Pomponianus's villa any longer because of the sheer amount of pumice that had fallen, in the early morning, Pliny the Elder and his companions decided to make a run for it.
They used strips of cloth to fasten pillows on their heads as a protection against falling stones. By now it was daylight elsewhere, but there it was night, blacker and denser than any night, though many torches and lights of various kinds relieved it.
Pliny and his companions were running a daunting gauntlet, their pillows acting as makeshift shields in their desperate attempt to protect themselves from the relentless falling material.
Stabiae was situated roughly 16 kilometers away from Mount Vesuvius. Pompeii was situated much closer, roughly 10 kilometers away from the volcano.
This closer proximity to the epicenter of the eruption proved devastating for those who had decided to try and wait it out in Pompeii, cowering in whatever shelter remained. Because during the morning of the second day of the eruption, something much more deadly would strike the town. Above Vesuvius, the great column of volcanic material partially collapsed under its own weight, causing the second, catastrophic phase of the eruption to begin.
From Mount Vesuvius, widespread flames and fires rising high blazed forth in several places, their gleaming brightness accentuated by the darkness of the night.
Thanks for watching this video on the History Hit YouTube channel. You can subscribe right here to make sure you don't miss any of our great films that are coming out. Or if you are a true history fan, check out our special dedicated history channel, historyhit.tv. You're going to love it.